My name is Daniel Sack, and I serve as the chair of the Subcommittee for the Excellence in Editing Award from the Association for Theatre and Higher Education. For 2022, we presented the award to a single edited volume, Rethinking Chinese Socialist Theaters of Reform, Performance, Practice, and Debate in the Mao Era, published by the University of Michigan Press in 2021. I'm joined today by the three co-editors of this volume. Xiaomei Chen is Distinguished Professor in the Department of East Asian Languages and Cultures at the University of California, Davis. Tarryn Chun is Assistant Professor in the Department of Film, Television, and Theater at the University of Notre Dame. And Siyuan Liu is Professor of Theater at the University of British Columbia. Thank you three for making the time to speak a little bit today. To begin, I wonder if one of you might say a few words about the vision for this book.
First of all, an enormous thank you to you, Daniel, for inviting us here today to talk about our book project, to the selection committee for the award, and of course to my two fellow editors and all of our contributors. It's an honor to receive the award and incredibly encouraging that a volume of this nature is being recognized by ATHE. I think one of our main motivations for this project was to create a collection that could reach a diverse audience and give interest and use to students and scholars both within and beyond Asian theater and performance studies. And so receiving this award really means that maybe we haven't failed in this service to the field. So just to begin, the volume of essays focuses on, as the title suggests, socialist theater reform in China during the Maoist era. And it explicitly carries the intention to expand our conventional understanding of each of the terms in the title, which is a lengthy one, and thereby to expand our understanding of modern Chinese theater more generally. So, for instance, if we unpack some of the terms, by socialist, we refer not only to state socialism, which is, I think, what we commonly think of, but also to the broader socialist ideals and ideology that motivated theater artists during the period we study, also to the international socialist community that they were engaged with. Similarly, our definition of theater encompasses a number of different genres and tries to move beyond the tendency to simplify Chinese theater to its most recognizable forms like Beijing opera, for example. And in turn, reform highlights efforts to reshape the theater that expands the temporality of modern and contemporary Chinese theater, looking at reforms and the desire for theater to affect change in the world as something that was ongoing from the end of the 19th century and continues through the 20th and into the 21st. We could even go back even further in time. So one of the things that the book is trying to do then is really to emphasize that the theater of the Chinese socialist period is part of a longer ongoing history that extends far beyond the specific temporality and geography of quote unquote socialist China. So in order to do this, the 9 chapters of the book follow roughly the same structure within each by starting with a specific production or a performance event. But each one brings a unique perspective to the question of how Chinese theater artists contended with politics and ideology while also pursuing their own artistic, economic, and personal goals. So to give just one quick example of this, in one chapter by Brian DeMere, he writes of the tensions between the type of theater, the type of repertoire that local officials wanted produced and what the theater artists on the ground were actually producing, some of which catered to these political desires, but some of which were what they called 吃面戏 or eating noodle shows, because the ones that had more special effects and spectacular, bizarre plots were the ones that attracted more audiences and actually enabled the artists to continue to earn a living. So, together what these chapters show is that, yes, much of the theater produced during the Maoist era in China did work to serve social functions or communicate ideology. And yes, we are right in our tendency to want to look for cases that subvert this or rebel against political control. But each of our authors looks at the actual historical record from their own perspective. And what they together find is that the real work of Chinese theater artists during this period most often took place not fully for or against the system, but rather in that gray area between hegemony and resistance. And I think that's one of the things that we really wanted to communicate by bringing together a number of different chapters and different perspectives. And, just one more quick word on the inspiration for the project. In addition to wanting to contribute to expanding our understanding of Chinese theater in this way, we are also really inspired and motivated by the fact that in Chinese studies in recent years, there's been a trend to re-examine and re-evaluate the High Socialist period, or the Maoist era, as we call it here, especially in social and cultural history, literature and cultural studies, film and media, visual material culture. And the impetus of this work is certainly not to absolve this era of the trauma perpetrated during it, especially during the Cultural Revolution, but rather to add nuance to our understanding of the lived experiences of this period. And in doing so, we move away from a narrative that's driven by an oversimplification of all cultural production to quote unquote mere propaganda, and away from a sort of narrow American Cold War view of what happened in socialist and communist states during this period. So those are some of the things that, brief overview of the book and some of the things that kind of inspired us to bring this perspective into our work in theater and performance studies.
Excuse me. A lot of this material is new to many of our colleagues in ATHE and in theater studies in the English-speaking world. So how do you see its intervention within the larger field of theater studies, but especially within the North American context?
I think that's my turn. Again, I like Tarryn. I also want to thank the committee and Daniel for the award and the interview. In addition, I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with my amazing colleagues, Xiaomei, Chen, Tarryn, Chun, and all the contributors. I'd like to follow up with Tarryn's introduction with the focus on some of the areas of our volume contributes to the larger field of the theater studies, starting with historiography. The varied disciplines of our contributors, ranging from history, literary studies, dance studies, to theater studies, is obvious in the diverse methodologies and breadths of the volume. We value equally archival research and personal memories, literary examinations, and performance analyses. As such, multiple perspectives and diverse viewpoints are in dialogue with and complement with each other. In terms of content areas, one of the volume's contributions is the nuanced considerations of the relations between theater and ideology, as Tarryn just said, offering new perspectives on stage works that have been dismissed as unworthy of scholarly study. One such example is the focus on technical aspects of the revolutionary model opera of the Cultural Revolution era, in particular, the central role of their perceived ideological efficacy. The PRC's blend of ideology and aesthetics also yield case studies in the volume that will be of interest to theater studies of Global South studies, especially from a chapter that focuses on China's staging of world revolutions of the 1960s, from a play of the leftist guerrilla rebels of the Congo through performances in support of African Americans, with a new adaptation of Uncle Tom's Cabin, and a living newspaper drama on the Vietnam War. Another article on the era's aesthetic politics at home and abroad studies a 1959 dance drama about the 19th century rebellion in Shanghai with contemporary emphasis on anti-imperialism. Furthermore, the chapter will also be of interest to dance studies in the treatment of the piece in connection with the development of Maoist revolutionary dance drama. Another area of the volume that intersects with general theater studies is the effect of modern Western theater on the communist era theater policies and practices, starting from the volume's first chapter on the impact of Wagner's total work of art on the creation of the first revolutionary opera, The White-Haired Girl. Another chapter links the wave of theatrical experimentations of the 1950s to Chinese avant-gardism of the early 20th century that was part of the world leftist avant-garde movement, which in turn affected the spirit of experimentation in the early years of the PRC. Apart from modernism and avant-garde, one of the most significant impacts of modern Western drama on PRC's theater policies is the belief of the supremacy of the scripted playtext. As discussed in one chapter, such blind trust in a script resulted in the early 1950s cultural policies that eliminated semi-scripted scenario plays of popular spoken drama and altered the dramatic and performance conventions of many traditional and folk song and dance theatrical forms. So as these case studies demonstrate, while this material may seem new to some of our ATHE membership, there is quite a vast common ground where this volume intersects with the theater scholarship of the English-speaking world. And again, we are grateful that the committee recognized this contribution from our volume.
Great. So this award is intended to honor editorial work, an often underappreciated aspect of our scholarly careers and devotions. And I wonder if you, the three of you, could speak about the editorial process between three different scholars such as yourselves, but also with the 7 contributors, and maybe give us a sort of look backstage at the process that you employed.
First of all, the collective work is really important. And as Daniel says, sometimes it's underappreciated. I think the real fun of this project, for me personally, is really to work with Tarryn and Siyuan, the amazing scholars, in the process of co-editing this work. And I personally benefit immensely from their wisdom, insight, and friendship. You do form very great friendship that will last for years. So the fun part is really the process, which was a great learning experience for me, and a true confirmation of value of collaborative work. The book's idea actually started after a 2017 panel at the annual conference of the American Association of Asian Studies in 2017, a panel that organized by Maggie Green. First of all, collective work start from there. So we were so impressed by the emerging and established scholars in and beyond that panel, and their new ideas, topics, and approaches to the study of socialist theater broadly defined. So this volume provides us a timely, really timely opportunity to showcase their most innovative works. And we're grateful to their commitment to the collaborative work, the commitment to the framework of the project, and especially their commitment to following the timeline. In collective work, sometimes it's really challenged. You have to do reminders. Some people drop out last minute, but none of them happened. Everybody was so friendly. And everybody was on schedule. We don't have to send any reminders. And it is an extremely friendly group of scholars. We really appreciate that. So through our various chapters, we were able to benefit from different approaches and to engage in amazing dialogues between scholarly research and personal reflection of the period, something that Tarryn and Siyuan already mentioned. We believe the lived experience as eyewitness account will really complement and also enrich scholarly research. There's a time difference, a space difference, and a personal perspective aspect of it. So we believe lived experience is also important work of our collective work, and both in teaching and in scholarly writing. We're also very grateful to the Liu Institute for Asia and Asian Studies and other programs at the University of Notre Dame, where Tarryn teaches, which supported a workshop in 2018 to discuss our first drafts. It was, again, a fun time with extremely friendly group both on campus and outside, and we look forward to more collective works together just like that. Last but not the least, we would like to thank Leanne Fields, editor of University of Michigan Press, and her amazing team for promoting Chinese theater scholarship over many years. Hopefully our book, to some extent, would reflect the progress and the dialogue in the field. Thank you again for the award. Thank you, Daniel, and the members of the selecting committee for your great leadership and great service to the field.